Hi. Going back to your current comic book deal, uh, things to come.
Yes.
Could you tell us how you came up with the concept for your comic book series, please?
Well, it is about vampires. Vampires have been so much in the news. You know, wherever you go, you'll run into a vampire. Yeah, the heartbroken ones, the ones that think getting bitten on the neck is the same thing as sexual penetration. I don't know. And I thought, well, you know, I think I have a different take on it. And that was the challenge, you know, not to capitalize. I was definitely trying to capitalize on a genre that is very popular, but also to, you know, the challenge of doing something that hasn't been done quite like the way I had conceived it. So I started writing it, and it took me a long time. Well, a lot of things that interfered. I went months without writing, and then I came back to it, and then I went months more without writing. So when I say 2 years, it sounds impressive, but I didn't work for 2 years. I worked for about 37 minutes, you know. But it was just the idea of working my brain in a way that felt original and felt like I was contributing something that was a little different. And also had, you know, I'm old enough to, God, believe me, I'm old enough, but, you know, to want to make some kind of a statement, you know, it's to leave something behind that speaks to the human condition and not simply tell, you know, action stories. Nothing wrong with action stories. I've seen some really good ones, but you know, action, sex stories. Not wrong. Anything wrong with that either. I've seen some of. Oh, never mind. But something that I'd say, you know, is my personal comment on, you know, that has a universal feeling to it. It is not strictly to be identified with the genre, but can have much broader appeal and broader understanding.
Thank you.
It's called Things to Come, by the way, and the first book will be released in May.
Way up to the top, the lady in red with the camcorder, way at the back. Did you expect the success of Star Trek to continue on through the generations to even younger people?
No. No, quite literally, you know, in 1969 when Gene Roddenberry called us and said, well, we've been canceled. You're all expecting it anyway. And he said, nice working with you. Hope we can do it again sometime. And that was just a very polite, cordial way of saying goodbye. And so I said, and that's when I figured that part of my life was over. You know, that was it. Okay, I had a nice run, 2 years. You know, I did 36 or 38 or whatever it was episodes. And now what do I do? And of course, it came back so gradually, with so many false starts, that there wasn't any one moment when you said to yourself, wow, we're back and here we are and we're doing it again. Because, as I say, you know, in 1975, there was an attempt to do Star Trek again. And in fact, that was, I lived by the principle of the other shoe falling and hitting me on the head. And in 75, when people got calls, you know, make sure you can fit into those uniforms, haha, we're going back to work, haha. I didn't get one of those calls. And of course, my paranoia ran rampant. I mean, it's usually running, but not necessarily rampant. And I tried calling Gene Roddenberry, you know, and I spoke to his secretary who said, "Oh, Walter, you're so neurotic. You're involved. You're in it." And I said to myself, but why didn't I get one of those letters? Why didn't they? So finally, Gene called. He was out of the country. Of course he's out of the country. You need to know something like that, and the guy can tell you he's out of the country. You know? He came back and he called me on a Sunday morning. I immediately thought that was very bad news. That's just my whole perspective. If you can interpret it two ways, I'm definitely going to interpret it in the more negative way. And you know what? I was absolutely right. Gene said to me, well, the problem is, Walter, the story that we have in mind takes place 3 years before the original show. You were 9 years older than the character that you played. And it's now 5 years since we did Star Trek. So 5 and 9 and 3 is like 17. So you'd have to play Chekov 17 years younger than you are. What do you think about playing Chekov's father? And I said, okay, good, that'd be great. But that was the last I heard of it. And I was out. I was definitely out of the show until, as it turns out, I mean, you know, events have a peculiar way of conspiring to shape your life. It just doesn't happen in a straight line. In fact, I'm writing another story about that kind of thing. If it would happen in a straight line, they would have made this movie. I would have been like Grace Lee Whitney. I would have been left, you know, on the sidelines. And I would have spent the next 30 years just feeling incredibly bitter about not being involved. But the head of the studio, who was Roman Catholic and devout, didn't like the God aspect of the story that Gene had come up with. And he nixed the story. He said, we're not going to do that story. Okay, the pages fly. It's 3 years later. They have a new concept. Chekov is back in their good graces. He doesn't have to be 16 years old. We, you know, even then, we came down for fitting, costume fitting. Everybody complimented me on the fact that I could still get into my costume, whereas some of the other actors couldn't. I didn't say anybody. And got home in time to pick up the phone and told that everything has been on hold. We are canceling this new Star Trek, and see you later. So that was like 1978. Then we were told we were going to go in early 79, I think it was, or late 78. We had a big press conference. It was the spring of 79. Big press conference at the studio. You know, hundreds of people, international press. Breakfast, everybody's the big speeches about how we're going forth, how we're going to, you know, taking our cue from Star Wars, which had become such a huge success. We were going to, you know, do a film that was going to knock everybody off their feet, and then we were postponed. And you know, ad infinitum, ad nauseum, this seemed to go on, and I really lost faith in the fact that we were going to make this movie, despite all of the hue and cry. And then they came when we were on the set. We had already shot the first scene, which was a long panning scene of everybody working at their consoles. And of course, you know, I had been replaced. I was no longer at the navigator's console. I was off in weaponry, so that Bill's wife could have a nice role in the picture. I don't know why nobody ever spoke about that. That was precisely the reason why that happened. And that was shot. And then we set up for the second shot, which was Kirk stepping out of the elevator, and Sulu, Uhura, and Chekov running up and saying, "Captain." And when we set up that shot, I said, we're making this movie. And it wasn't until then that I actually believed that we were going to make this film. That's how Gunshot happened. And the rest is history.